Merry Christmas, everyone, and welcome to a special session here with Pastor Dale Witherington of RestoreMN.org. RestoreMN.org. You can find out more about his work, his live appearances, and his many materials and writings online. Uh, this has been a wild election cycle, Pastor Dale Witherington, and what an exciting time. I mean, victory. It's like right now we have Trump as president already. It's like a bonus 3 months already. Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah, very much so. And Merry Christmas to you and to your listeners, your watchers. Always good to be with you. So thanks for having me back. And yes, thanks for acknowledging Restore Minnesota. But yes, it does seem that the world has embraced and recognized Donald Trump as the not just the president elect, but now is acting as if he's president because we don't know where our president has been. He's disappeared for much of the year. Um, there was a coup against him by his own party, um, and now he's getting really interesting by handing out all these pardons and clemencies. So I think that most of us are we very much desire for January 20th to get here as quickly as possible.
Seems like much of the world desires the same thing. Even our neighbor to the south, Mexico, Canada, now Japan is jumping on board with pledges of economic growth in the United States, and jobs are coming back. And that deal was doubled from 100 billion to 200 billion during the press conference with the Japanese banker. So all kinds of changes. And like you said, I'm glad you mentioned that because we really don't know who is in charge right now. Like we have no idea how our government works right now. I don't think anybody could name the defense secretary. The media always talks about who Trump is nominating for these various offices, but we don't know who's in charge of really the different departments of our government. And what a relief that Trump is on the way. It's interesting, so many world leaders calling in to speak to President Trump, but we know nothing about any conversations between the other guy. Almost like Biden is in a corner somewhere. Strange.
Well, between you, me, and the fence post, all those other people, if they're talking to their side, they're talking to Barack Obama. Um,
Yeah.
let's face it. I think most folks have been of the opinion for the last 4 years that Barack Obama has been the power behind the throne anyway. This has been Obama term 3, and he thought he was going to have Obama term 4 because certainly Kamala Harris was not fit at all to be president of the United States. I think the remarkable thing is if you remember in September of 2019, I'm not going to mention the organization, but an organization in a little part of Zumbro, Minnesota, and I'm just not mentioning for their own protection. But I think the Republican Party in that area, they held a banquet in September of 2019. You were there. I was there. The guest speaker was Trevor Loudon.
Yes, sir.
And
Yep.
Trevor told us in September of 2019 to watch Kamala Harris rise to the top of the ticket. And we all thought that he had lost his mind. And the next thing we know is she's running for president. She can't get 1 or 2% for her own party. So she drops out. Biden gets the nomination. He picks her as the vice president. I'm still not sure he picked her. I think there's an oligarchy behind him that made that pick. That way they could keep their leash on him and on her. And that same group is who helped get him out of office while he's in office, put her in the position. Why? Because they could keep her on a short leash and they could keep Tim Walz. They picked Tim Walz to keep him on a short leash. And there are going to be people who are going to have a hard time believing this, but I've got some connections with members, current members, and former members of our intelligence community who are really solid men of God. They're solid American citizens. And I had some conversations because who would have ever thought Tim Walz would have been chosen to run as vice president? And of course, now that that campaign's done and they lost and he got exposed as much as he did, there's a lot of people who are wondering, how did this man get picked? Well, the logic is pretty simple. You keep a short leash on Kamala Harris, and you can keep a short leash on a gentleman like him, but they needed him or wanted him because he was still going to be their main connection to China with Biden out of the way. Most people are not really aware, and some of it came out during the election of Tim Walz's connections to communist China and what he's done with them, what that impact has been in the state of Minnesota. So that was their connection. And fortunately, the people of America started seeing through it. They saw the difference between the Trump administration from 2016 to 2020, and then a Biden administration from 2020 until this point. And America rose up and said, no more. We've got to get back to being America again.
Fantastic. And it's interesting, you would remember that Trevor Loudon event. There's actually video footage of the Trevor Loudon event. Even I believe there's one prior to that, not just at the banquet, but Trevor Loudon spoke out about, I had never heard Kamala Harris's name before.
Yeah.
And he said she's going to run for president, and they're going to, like, as you said, run her up the flagpole. And we all looked at each other. I had no idea who he was talking about. And then he filled us in. So Trevor Loudon was way ahead of the curve on that name and calling it as it is. He knows a lot about Minnesota. In recent sessions, he's revealed a lot of the issues of fraud we have in Minnesota that's really grown over the last 10 years. We've seen a lot of this just springing up around us. This is a winning issue for Republicans, but it's a losing issue for all Minnesotans, Democrats included. Can we talk a little bit about the fraud, this rampant, and now we have a new case of autism centers being ripped off, of taxpayers being ripped off through autism centers. Is there anything you want to add to that about the FBI raids 2 days ago and so forth?
Not so much that as just being another example of Minnesota having a governor who is in the seat of governor but has no clue about what's going on. And when it comes to these economic things, it was 3-4 weeks ago, there was a report that came out that rated all 50 governors in the United States and their ability to handle the economy. They were rated simply on how they've handled the economy of their states. And Tim Walz came in at number 50 out of 50. Well, you add fraud to the fact that you are incompetent to knowing how to handle a multi-billion-dollar budget. And so what ends up happening to Minnesotans? Here's what happens. In 2023, you take an $18 billion taxpayer surplus, and instead of giving any of it back to the taxpayers and leaving some in reserve, which would have been smart, but instead of giving it back, what did they do? They spent all of it.
Right.
And when they realized how much they'd spent, or even before they realized it, they went into 2024 and they said, okay, coming into the next biennium, we've got to raise our budget by X percent. It's some obnoxious percent that they raised the budget. They couldn't meet the budget to begin with, but they raised the budget, and then they raised our taxes by 10%, while at the same time creating legislation that has driven enough businesses out of the state of Minnesota that we're losing at least $550 million a year of revenue. And it's being replaced mostly by people coming into the state who are not productive to state revenue. So what happens? What happens is you raise taxes on the people who are already productive and are already paying taxes, and our taxes continue to go up to pay for the incompetency of the governor and his Democrat trifecta. So we are going into this next biennium, and with all projections I've seen and heard so far, we are projected to go through the next 2 years with a $5.6 billion shortfall. So when we start this session here on January 14th, what's got to happen is there's got to be some bipartisan collaboration that says we've got fat and stuff that's got to be cut out of the budget. We have got illegal fraud taking place. It's spending taxpayer money illegally, and we've got to clean this mess up. And we don't have a governor that's capable of doing it. So the legislators really need to do it. They need to force the governor to sign onto whatever legislation that they can create, if they can create it. And in the process, we're asking Minnesotans to join us at Restore Minnesota and even send us suggestions as to what are the qualities that we want to see in our new governor for 2026. We need to start identifying what our principles are, what our values are, what our policies are for an effective governing person to sit in that chair as governor and put a new person in that seat in 2026.
Excellent point. So many issues there to unpack, and what you were saying at the start of this particular segment on corruption and the ineptitude of Governor Walz strikes me as useful. That wouldn't, if you were a puppet master like Obama and you had already a puppet as malleable as Kamala Harris, wouldn't you want one of the most corruptible or vulnerable idiots to serve as vice president? And sorry, these comments are on me. Maybe that is going a little too far, but you would want someone that was so steeped in corruption already that they were vulnerable to being manipulated by their puppet masters. So maybe a character like Tim Walz, who's already presiding over so much fraud, waste, and abuse inside the state of Minnesota, would be a useful character to put in national office if you wanted to Minnesota my America, right?
Yeah, and I do want to be careful to your point. In fact, here's an excellent book that you've maybe seen, maybe haven't. It is, hold it up here, it is by former state senator here in Minnesota, Paul Gazelka. He was the majority leader. It is called Behind the Veil, A Stand Against Governor Tim Walz. And when Paul Gazelka was in our Senate and when he was our majority leader, the one thing that he did really well as a senator, and the one thing he continues to do as a private citizen, even in writing this book, he does an excellent job he avoids character assassinations against the person, in this case, Tim Walz, while at the same time looking at Tim Walz as governor and measuring him against the core values of his competency, of skills as a governor and as a leader. And the whole second half of this book is a book that describes in detail the incompetency of this man that sits as governor in the state of Minnesota. So regardless of what we may or may not choose to do with him personally, I want to avoid the character assassination as much as focus on the fact that we have a governor who has proven to us through, by the time we get to the end of 2026, he'll have proven through 2 terms. He is not a good leader. He is not well skilled. He is incompetent to continue serving as governor, and he should not be the governor of Minnesota when 2026 elections come about. So we are in process right now of developing a list of what are the qualities of an effective, righteous governor. Mm-hmm. And And we're going to focus on developing that list. I've got some folks working on it with me. So this is not, for those of you who are going to do sound bites, not. Dale Witherington's list. This is a multitude of efforts, even from different racial and faith background communities. Let me put it that way. We just want to identify what do we really need in a governor that we haven't had for the last 6 years and we don't anticipate having for the next 2. It's time for that man to be put out to pasture, to go join the rocks and cows.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe he'll do that in another state. Saddens me that he'll be able to walk away from what he's done in Minnesota, probably. The thing that some of us, I spoke on a microphone, city councils and county commissioners, about the need for a government, a department of government efficiency here in Minnesota, similar to the DOGE, which is being proposed by Elon Musk and President Trump in Washington, due to the fact that we just have this long list of abuse of taxpayer money going back to the Feeding Our Future fraud, before that, the
Yes.
daycare scandals and so forth, and that we see the Medicare, Medicaid fraud developing in Minnesota, with people not actually being serviced by clinics or taking advantage of transportation benefits, and none of that really occurred. And then the Feeding Our Future fraud was stealing food out of the mouths of babies, and then the elder nutrition program fraud, where the elderly meals program was being defrauded. It's just such a shameful thing. Maybe it was a useful thing to have Tim Walz exposed on the national stage, because then so many of those issues came to light nationally, and all of that was rehashed again, stuff that we had been talking about a decade ago, years ago.
Yeah, I agree with that, Wes. As you know, our group, Restore Minnesota, I'm a pastor. I'm a chaplain to our elected officials throughout the state, and so we have got intercessory prayer teams all around the state of Minnesota, and now in different parts of the country we've got some intercessors. But let's focus on Minnesota. Let's focus on Minnesota for a second. We have been praying, as you've said, for over a decade, for God to help expose evil in our nation. And we believe that during this last campaign, more evil was exposed over the last 6-8 months than for many years leading up to this time. And so now that it's exposed, we are praying that not only is it exposed, but that it would be righteously dealt with, that there would be justice done where there's illegalities, that those who have created it would be removed from office. Certainly from a Christian perspective, if we've got people who don't know Jesus, we want them to know Jesus. These are people who could be very spiritually lost, and they need salvation and removed from office. So God is answering the prayers of those of us who've been wanting evil exposed. But just because evil gets exposed, it's got to be replaced with something. And as you know, our mission statement is to restore righteousness in Minnesota by promoting biblical citizenship that educates, equips, empowers, and encourages Holy Spirit-led engagement, county by county, community by community, family by family, and that will result in both spiritual and civic transformation. And that transformation will be based on the same gospel of Jesus Christ that our founders used to draw the principles when they wrote the Declaration of Independence, and then carried out those principles into the specifics of the details of our United States Constitution. So that's what we're fighting for.
Beautiful. Well said. And I want to apologize to listeners for my grungy coughing. I'm drinking a lot of hot tea today. This is the season for Christmas caroling. And earlier today, I had 2 events with elders and singing Christmas songs. So my voice is really fried. to the point of exposing evil in Minnesota, rarely do we get an opportunity, as we have presented at the Capitol building now, of evil on full display as part of an actual exhibit. And it was one of the reasons I reached out to you today, is that I woke up with a spirit of forgiveness on me, whereas a couple of days after I saw the imagery of this satanic display, I was reacting more from a position of anger. And I suddenly today woke up with the knowledge that we see cases throughout the Bible where God can use sinful men, and God can use anyone he wishes to use to further his purposes and plans. And somehow, if we could talk about it at all, if you have anything to say, somehow this display of Satanism in the Capitol building shows everyone that this is real and these people are here and they are amongst us. And Minnesota has a special issue with Satanism and Satanists. But when you see it on display in the physical manifestation of this Satanist theory present in actual physical world, it helps perhaps people to believe that God is real, because even the devil knows that God is real and he trembles. So it may help lead people actually to dedicating their lives to Christ. Is there such a, what do you feel about that? That was just my reaction.
Well, I appreciate that. So my initial knee-jerk reaction, which is rarely good, because I played defensive back in college, and 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 this brings up the instincts of wanting to hit something or somebody,
Yeah.
but that's not right. That's not what we're going to do. Here's
Right.
what's going to happen tomorrow at noon at the Minnesota State Capitol. We have put together a little flyer, and apparently it's gone all over the state by now. Lots of people are
Yeah.
getting it out. We are gathering at the Capitol steps tomorrow at noon, and then we are going to go in together, and we're going to go into that part of the state Capitol building where that display is located. We are not going to be a mob to violent. We're not going to tear it down. We're not going to touch it. We're not going to do anything to it, because number one, no matter how disrespectful that display is to Christians, Jews, Muslims, anybody with a brain cell, no matter
Buddhist.
how distasteful it is, we are not going to display the same ugly spirit that those people display towards us when we do our thing, or when they tore down the Columbus statue.
Right.
Right. So we are
Right.
not going to lower ourselves to their level. Satan is a defeated foe. We Christians, we give him too much power that he doesn't have. He's defeated. He's a toothless tiger who's been stomped to death, and God has given him some rule for some period of time to try to destroy the image of God on earth. Who's the image of God on earth? You and me, people, human beings. So the followers of that satanic group, they are deceived. They have been lied to. They are under the enslavement of the father of lies. And what we want to do is distinguish the difference between the satanic system that we will speak against and pray against and sing Christmas carols against. But we're going to be doing this all for the praise of God and the Lord Jesus, to whom we dedicated that state capitol grounds years ago, and we redid it again when it was renovated. So Jesus is Lord at the Capitol. The satanic display is not. And those people who are the followers or the people who put it up, they're lost. They need Jesus. And we know that because they put the satanic statue up in Iowa last year, and some guy went, knocked the head off, and he was arrested and he got fined for destruction of property. This last weekend, I think it's in New Hampshire, they had put the same Baphomet satanic statue up there. It got knocked down, and there'll probably be some ramifications. They expect us to do that. I'm not going to have us live up to their expectations, because why do we want to give them that national attention? We don't. What we want to be able to do is stand in front of them and say, this means nothing. You can try to offend us, but you're not offending us as much as you're offending God. And just like when Elisha stood with the prophets of Baal and said, you guys are playing with fire against God, and God's fire came down from heaven and destroyed them all. It's funny to me that the name on the platform with this display, there is a specific name that is escaping me right now. I'm trying to see if I've got it in front of me. But whatever, people will see it. It's part of the little plaque there. It's thanks to the congregation, and then it's thanks to, and they mention this name. Well, that name for those people is a mischievous, demonic fire spirit. And I just find it really funny that it's a fire spirit, because they're playing with the fire of God. So is fire from God going to fall from heaven tomorrow in the Capitol? And what would that look like? I don't know. All I know is we are going to gather as Minnesotans, and we're going to say this is not representative of the people of Minnesota. Now, there is a legal fight that may take place from another standpoint, because the administration in the state of Minnesota was kind of caught between a rock and a hard place. They think they had to allow this display according to First Amendment religious freedom. And unfortunately for them, and we've been told they're going to have attorneys at our event tomorrow, because the attorneys are waiting to come get us. So they're going to be very disappointed. There's not going to be anything to come get. But if we were going to do anything legally, we're going to be able to show them that the display that they put up is based upon a belief that to be part of their particular group involves and requires, from their own writings, human sacrifice, particularly babies. Well, that's not a First Amendment issue. That is a crime. That is illegal. So that display might be proven to be illegal. So I might even be tipping my hand to anybody trolling this right now, except by the time this gets out, it'll be too late. This may be an illegal display. And what is the human sacrifice that is often conducted when it comes to satanic ritual or satanic belief? It's abortion on demand for any reason. And who's got the worst abortion laws in the nation? Minnesota. So go ahead.
So the group mentioned is the Minnesota Satanists.
Yeah.
And I don't then I can't get any better picture of the plaque.
Yeah.
I know I've seen it broken down in some place, the photos you can zoom in. But one of the things that is astonishing about the display is that I would think, much similar to the way that the Nazi swastika perverts the ancient symbol. It's actually a Buddhist, that you'll find temples will be identified on maps with a swastika, but the Nazis, Hitler perverted that and changed the angles on it, turned it around. So still to this day, in Asian countries, you'll see swastikas all over the place, and that denotes the existence of a special temple for a Buddhist tradition and local worship for their tradition. The crane, the use of the crane, is another element of offense to, interesting, our background seems to be Asian shrubbery today, but the use of the crane in this work of art, and particularly origami, I find particularly offensive because I've been to the bomb museums at Nagasaki and Hiroshima many times. And the story of the crane and the importance of parables from their their traditional faith. And I'm not here to promulgate that or propagate a faith, but I'm saying that I was even offended by a paper crane in the style of Japanese origami to be included in this, because it's here the point I'm getting toward is that Satan can't create anything. Satan can only pervert and destroy things that are created in the world that are given to us by God. Satan will adopt it and then pervert it and bring it down. So as a symbol of peace, as a symbol of ending suffering, as a symbol of trying to be atoned to life after painful suffering, the crane to exploit the origami in this, I'm appalled. It's a level that, but it's what is. This is what they do. So
well, and it's interesting that you would have seen that too as a crane. You're the first person that's identified it as such. Most everybody that has written to me, texted me, or has been on prayer calls with me over the last 2 days, they're identifying it as the rising of the phoenix, and the time of year with Hanukkah and coming into a new year, they're seeing it the rising of the dead, and they're seeing it as a mockery of Christianity because they're mocking the resurrection of Christ. The plaque part that you can't read is mocking the Lord's Supper, because in that plaque it talks about the blood, it talks about the body. There's a lot of somewhat Christian lingo in there.
This part of the crane, if I could try to, it disappears completely. But there's a black folded paper crane in front of the rest of the. I agree. It looks like Phoenix rising from the ashes to reinvent itself or recreate itself. But there's a couple of these folded paper cranes that are black, and then they have like a crescent moon on them. So this paper itself, it's a specially folded paper crane, and I have to wonder who did that for them, because I'm sure their fingers aren't nimble enough to create this. They probably bought it somewhere or co-opted it from somebody else who was making these. And these are symbols of peace and tranquility and love in Asia. The idea of a crane rising peacefully from the water, it denotes the way a person is supposed to live their life, in a sense, without disturbing the balance of what's going on around you. When a crane takes off from a rice paddy, it gracefully sort of just hops into the air and silently rises on the wind. So it's a metaphor for how people are supposed to enter into situations or leave situations, to come into a relationship or depart a relationship. You're supposed to do it with grace and humility. But it's just,
which is remarkable, Wes, because we want to do tomorrow what we want to do tomorrow. We want to make a statement, but we want to make that statement with grace, peace, and humility.
There you go. Exactly. No, thank you for hearing that. And I hope to be there tomorrow. I can't say that I will be. I got up very early this morning and had a couple of meetings. I actually took a 2-hour nap this afternoon, which I'm not accustomed to doing, but I hope to be able to make it to the Capitol tomorrow. And I'm glad it's going to be a peaceful thing done in the right spirit, as Christians do.
Yeah. I've had all kinds of suggestions as to what we could do or should do, but the most trusted advisors, the people I rely on most, the most godly men and women that I talk with, we are all agreed this needs to be a peaceful, and I'll use your terminology, graceful, humble time together, without backing down on the spiritual nature of the prayers and the Christmas carols that actually lift up the Lord Jesus, tear down the the dark spiritual strongholds, and expose them as being empty for what they are, but to do it in a manner that, as we said at the top of the broadcast, is taking the moral high ground and gives the other side nothing to which they can come at us and say, "Look, you're just as you're just like us, just on the other side. You're doing your version of January 6th." No, actually, we're not. Um,
No.
so that's what I'm looking forward to tomorrow, and I know that
Right.
there's going to be people probably in the crowd that want to try to incite
Oh,
a riot,
yeah.
and so we've got lots of prayer warriors praying against that. And in the meantime, I will lead this to the best of my ability to keep it peaceful.
Excellent. Very, very well done, Pastor. And it seems that bringing Christmas carols tomorrow. Do you guys have enough song sheets and so forth?
I'm not going to bring song sheets. We have no idea how many people to expect,
Okay.
so I'm just going to pick a few songs that everybody knows. And
Okay.
if they don't know the words, enough people will. So we'll sing along, hum along. But those who know the words, but they're familiar Christmas carols.
Excellent. Well done. I wish we could get together, all of us, each Christmas to do Christmas carols without it being something provoked by something, as if they're saying that we're reactionary to something they do. But
Right.
if you could imagine the outrage recently that was in even the non-liturgical press, the secular press was outraged, of course, and it should be, that there was a swastika drawn on a synagogue, or in the past when there's been bacon very carefully placed in front of a mosque or on a doorknob or something, some such offensive action. For Satanists to choose this time of year to call for to basically call for illegal activity in the face of the birth of the baby Jesus, uh, understanding that Baphomet is their God in charge of this particular area of the planet, according to them, that is the God interested in abortion and child sacrifice. So they're drawing it all together for even secular people to see. They're drawing it together. It's almost a witness for Jesus Christ. It's actually, we
Yes.
could take it as it's a strange thing to say, but we could take this as a blessing that people may actually rededicate their lives to God when they're confronted with such evil. It was when I saw a video of these clowns dancing in churches up and down the aisles in celebrating perversion. They're posting it online of celebrating their stuff inside the
Yep.
Christian churches. That melted my heart,
Yeah.
right? So this is something that kind of softens our hearts, hopefully. Makes
Well,
us
and I think you just used a very loose definition of the term Christian church, because I don't think a true Christian church is going
no,
to allow that in their facility, in their service, any
no.
more than the Minnesota Historical Society should have allowed, because they should not have allowed that same kind of drag queen dancer dancing on the Star of the North on
Oh,
the floor of the rotunda, where it's that's a roped off area. Nobody's permitted to go into that roped off area. And we work very hard. People respect that area. If children go under the rope, we ask them to please come back on the other side. The Historical Society does a great job keeping people off that star. But when they had a drag queen performer and they did a drag queen performance event, nobody did anything to stop that man dressed as a woman from dancing on that star. And they think they're taking over the building. They are not.
that's right. That's right. Well, I really hope that we talk sooner rather than later in this coming year, because there's so much to get ready for as we celebrate the triumphant return and continuing return
Yep.
of President Trump. And we look forward to everything that is to come. America's already getting better and greater again. Thank you, Pastor Dale Witherington. And let's all remember, visit his site, restoremn.org. And I'll put the link in the comments below, as usual, and with all of the subsequent postings of this video online for all to enjoy. And thank you, Pastor Dale Witherington, for all you do for Minnesota to restoremn.org. Thank you.
Thank you, Wes. Always a pleasure to be with you. And maybe we do this again just after the inauguration.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's circle back, as
very good.
As Jen Nutsaki used to say. We'll get back and do it again.
Just shoot me a message and we'll set it up. Thanks so much. Have a Merry Christmas and a blessed New Year.
God bless. Merry Christmas.
Bye-bye.